Do y'all remember the good old days? You know what I'm talking about, before COVID. Right before COVID hit, we actually purchased the property with tenants in place. It was a turnkey property, and this property had an ancient oil heater. The heater for the property was this ancient heater. It was on its last leg. The previous landlord was probably making small patchwork repairs here and there just to keep this thing running, and it was no good. It was not efficient. It wasn't good for the tenant, and we didn't think it was going to make it through the winter. So, being the good landlords that we are, call up our contractor. Say, hey, this property has this oil heater. It sucks. There's gas at the property. Let's replace it. Let's put in this gas heater. Let's put in this gas water heater, because the oil heater actually made the hot water, and get this new tenant set up, right? Let's get them set up for the winter. Make sure they're not going to have any no heat issues, and let's rock and roll. So the contractor came out, did the work in a professional manner, and never filed the permit. And we didn't follow up with them. That's our fault, right? We didn't say, hey, did you file that permit? Did you file that permit? You know, we got to follow up, and we didn't do that. So what happens? COVID hits. What happens when COVID hits? Offices are shut down. Everything's a complete mess, and all the drama associated with COVID, honestly, it fell through the cracks. And because we never ended up getting that permit, fast forward a few years, and it turned into a court summons, fines, court, all sorts of drama in order to get it resolved and get everything into compliance, which we did. So that being said, my name is Chatto, and I've been a landlord for 25 years, and I unfortunately have a lot of lessons that I learned the hard way. And in this video, I'm going to tell you what happened and what I do now and what I do differently to prevent it from happening again. So this particular property was purchased with a tenant in place. Like I said, it was a turnkey property. It was purchased right before the pandemic. Again, the heating system was atrocious, and we needed to get it replaced. Call up our contractor. He comes out, and he gets it handled. Great. He did a great job, did a wonderful job, but he didn't pull the permits. And we never followed up with him. We never made sure that the permits were pulled. And, of course, COVID hit. I don't know if you remember COVID, if you were a landlord at that time, but when COVID hit, there was an eviction moratorium. You couldn't get into any of the city buildings. There were all sorts of new rules. Everybody was afraid, didn't know what was going on. And in the midst of all that drama, the permits fell through the cracks. So, great. It is what it is. We forgot to get permits. City doesn't like that. So what happens is a few years later, this tenant actually gets behind on rent. This tenant actually gets to the point where we actually have to file eviction on her because she's not paying. And of course, the only thing we can do is file eviction. We don't have much of a choice. You know, we got to file that eviction and get that deadline set to either pay or you go, one or the other. Like, I can't not collect rent from you. So we file the eviction, and of course, she takes it personally. And her response to that is every issue with the property that she can think of, she calls up the city. Instead of calling us and saying, hey, X is broken, can you come fix it? She calls the city and says, hey, X is broken, can you come check it out? So that the city comes out, inspects the property, and then sends us a violation to fix whatever it was. I'm like, just call us, we'll fix it. I don't care that you're in eviction. Like, if something's broken, we're going to fix it. But no, she's got to call the city. So of course the city comes out and they decide to inspect the property. Why not? She's letting them in. Let's inspect the property and see what we can find. And of course, they saw the new heater. They saw the new water heater without permit stickers on them. So they knew there was no permits. So of course they issue us a summons for getting work done without permits. So they issue the summons, and of course that becomes a whole big pain in the rear. They issue the summons. We have to go to Zoom court. Luckily, because of COVID and all that stuff, it was on Zoom. Makes it a little easier than physically going down to the courthouse. But, you know, I'm on Zoom. We got to pay the fees. And we still got to pay the fees for the inspection, right? And now we have a tenant who we're at odds with, and we're trying to get the permit inspection done and get them in there to get that closed out and do the inspections and just all the stuff that was associated with all this drama that came out of it because we didn't follow up and make sure that the permits got filed. If the permits would have got filed, then great. You know, we would have been in a much better position. All we have to do is get them closed out, and we didn't do it. So it all became this big thing because that could have been so much simpler. And the big takeaway is if you don't do things the right way, they come back to bite you. They always come back to bite you. And this gave her more ammunition, right, to make our lives difficult. It didn't affect the result of the eviction, and she actually got current again, and she actually left not too long after that, which was great because we were able to raise the rent a good amount of money because she was there for a while and at way below market rent. But it would have been so much easier if we just would have handled everything up front. It just would have been so much easier. So really, in this particular case, luckily we had tenants in place. It's not just about the fine. But the other thing you need to think about is what happens at the turnover. Most townships require a certificate of occupancy when you do a turnover. And part of doing a certificate of occupancy, they come in and inspect the property. Now, if that property was vacant and they came out and inspected it and saw that there was no permits for the heater and the water heater, we wouldn't have been able to get a clear certificate of occupancy until we got that done. Permits take a while to get done. It's so important that we get these permits and just follow through and do things the right way. But if you think about it, if that property rents for $1,500 a month, and I have a tenant, and I go in there and I get, my tenant moves out, and I go in there and I get the inspection. The city comes in and says, "Oh, there's no permits." What's going to happen? They're going to say you have to get permits in order to get the certificate of occupancy. So now I got to go and I got to apply for the permits. I got to wait for them to be approved. I got to pick them up. I got to schedule the inspection. I got to get the inspectors out. I got to pass the inspection, and then I got to get the permit closed out. And that process is not easy. I mean, in an expedited fashion, maybe I'll be lucky to get it done in a month and a half. So now at $1,500 a month, I'm looking at $3,000 in potential lost rent because I didn't go and get permits up front. And even if it's not intentionally, right, it's about doing things the right way and following through. So that could end up costing a lot of money if it actually didn't get caught. So it's probably a good thing that she called the city while she was living there, because we already had her in place and we're already collecting rent, right? And it didn't affect a turnover tendency, because that would have been a huge slowdown. And here's another thing, like in these small townships, right, there's only a few inspectors in a lot of these smaller townships, and they get to know you. And if you're constantly cutting corners and you're constantly not doing things the right way, they're going to catch on to that. They're going to remember that and potentially make your life a little bit more difficult. Maybe they're not going to cut you as much slack on something because they know that you're not necessarily going to do what you say. They know you're not doing things the right way. So it's always good to not cut corners and do things the right way. So you want these, I mean, if these inspectors are trying to have you do something that just like doesn't make sense and just, it's going to be expensive and just is not really for any real reason, you can push back nicely, right? You can push back nicely, but ultimately they have the control. They come in and they determine whether or not you get a certificate of occupancy, whether or not you pass your permit, and all that. So you want them to be on your side. And if you do things the right way, they're going to be more happy with you and they're more likely to work with you if you do things the right way and they see that pattern. So anyway, that being said, fast forward to this winter, we actually had a heater fail, right? And they call up the heater guy. Can you check out this property? He says he's got no heat. He comes out to the property. There's no heat. He comes back to me and he's like, yeah, it's going to cost you like $2,500 to repair everything that needs to get repaired on this heater. And I don't even know how long it's going to last. This is an old heater. And I'm like, okay, $2,500. What's it going to cost to replace it? To replace it, it's going to be $6,000. Think about it for a minute. Did some quick math in my head, and I determined with the length of how long a new heater would last me versus a maybe on how long a fixed old piece of junk heater is going to last me. I did the math, and I said, you know what? It's better to just get the new heater. So I said, yep, go ahead, get the heater. Now, he comes next day, boom, because they didn't have heat. Next day, gets the heater put in, done. We need permits, right? So now we've been following up with him in order to get these permits done. And we are about 3 months since this heater got put in, and the permits are open. We've had a couple inspections, which unfortunately we failed. Sometimes because nobody's there to let the inspector in. Sometimes just because there's something they want different and they want them to change. And now we're still waiting for the final inspection to get the final permits closed out on this property. But because we did it the right way, if these tenants ever move out, we're good to go for the tenant turnover. So it just, again, learning from that lesson, going forward, is like just do things the right way. If you do things the right way, it's going to be much easier on the back end, right? You're going to have a lot less friction, and it's going to cost you a lot less money. So hopefully, with that being said, with this video, hopefully was of value to you. You know, I've been blabbering on about 10 minutes about doing things the right way. It's easy to get contractors to do the work. Make sure they do it right and follow up. Make sure you get permits if needed. And just with everything. It'll come back to bite you if you don't do it the right way. Do it right the first time. Pull the permits. Get it done. Bite the bullet, and it's going to save you a lot of effort. If you have a good tenant, take care of them, right? And that's what we were trying to do in this situation. But whenever a tenant stops paying, they turn from a good tenant into a bad tenant. And they're going to weaponize every shortcut that you've taken in order to fight back. Don't give them that ammunition. The city doesn't care what happened. They don't care why. They just know you don't have a permit. They don't care if you got busy. They don't care if you forgot. They don't care if COVID hit. They just see unpermitted work, and they want it to be permitted. So you got to follow up now and do it. And just like thinking back, like when I first got started, I had a couple of properties, and I said to myself, oh my gosh, so much drama to deal with the city. I'm not going to register these properties. And I didn't register the properties. And I'm like, they're just going to be a pain. I'm not going to register the properties. And of course, I didn't do it right. And what happened? It came back to bite me. And recently, right, a couple years ago actually, what happened was the eviction laws changed, and you weren't able to file for eviction unless you had proof that your property was registered. So now, if I have properties that are not registered and I need to file on one of these tenants, my hands are tied. I can't do it. Now, I got to go down to the city, right, and I got to file for registering the property. And now, they're like, well, why are you registering this property if you've owned it all this time, and now all of a sudden it's a rental? What's going on? Oh, you already have tenants in place? Oh, okay. And now you're going to get on the radar. Now you're going to have a court summons. Now you're going to have an adversarial relationship when they come out and they say, okay, you know, when they're inspecting your property, they're probably going to be a little harder on you because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You should have known the rules, right? Not knowing the rules is not an excuse. And when you get caught, it always makes things more difficult. So just do things the right way. Register your properties the way you need to register them. Get permits the way you need to get permits, and just follow through and do things the right way. That being said, if you're still watching at this point, we're like 12, 13 minutes in. I appreciate your hanging out and chatting with me. The bottom line, like I said, is do things right. And I wanted to offer you, if you go to chatwithchatto.com, I have a free PDF that you can download that you can take with you to your property. So when you walk through the property, you can check things and you can make sure that everything while you're there gets handled. You're not having things that are getting missed, such as preventative maintenance things, right? You're going to be able to do things that are going to prevent future service calls and save you money and prevent small issues from becoming big issues. So feel free to go and grab that. And also while you're there, feel free to book a quick chat with Chatto if you want to talk to me. If there's anything that I can do to help you out, I would love to be able to. And again, I would really appreciate if you like and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Chat with Chatto.